Hey, creative people, and welcome back to another episode of the Creative Legacy Art Podcast. My name is Amanda Downs, and I am your host. And today we will interview me. This is my interview, and I'll be talking about how this podcast came to be, my creative process, and everything in between. Enjoy. Hey, creative people, welcome back to another episode of the Creative Legacy Art Podcast. My name is Amanda Downs, and I'm your host. And today is a very special episode because this is the sixth and final episode of season 1 of the Creative Legacy Art Podcast. It's also a special day because this is my 7th year art anniversary. So I'm so excited to be able to celebrate and share that with you today. And this is also a special episode because this will be a solo show. And today I'm going to talk about Creative Legacy Art Podcast, how it came to be, what inspires it, and what it's all about. So let's get right into it. I am a visual artist. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm currently living in Nashville, and I've been doing art 7 years as of today. Throughout these years, I've showcased my work in different events and art shows around Nashville. I've had a couple of virtual shows, and I also had a show in Kentucky. I am also a part of the Metro Arts Lending Library. It's in partnership with the Nashville Public Library, and it's a program where you can check out artwork from local artists. And my painting is one of those paintings that could be checked out by library patrons. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm very excited to see what's to come. I've also been involved with community programming. I've done art classes and sewing classes with the National Library as well. And I'm just excited about being able to work with the people and being able to share my love for art. And so, how I got started with painting, I took a painting class at the Nashville Public Library. My local branch had a painting with Bob Ross class, and that was my first time ever painting, picking up a paintbrush and trying to paint. I've always I grew up watching Bob Ross, and I always wanted to be able to paint along with him, and I never had the supplies or whatever. So, as soon as I saw that opportunity, I was just really excited. That was such a fun class. I really felt like I did well. It was my first time painting using acrylics, and I was just so excited about painting. I went out and bought my own set of paint and brushes and just started painting in my free time. Um, During that time, I did a couple of, I guess you could call them like series. I did a Black women's portrait series, and I did a Black history portrait series of artists who have inspired me over the years. And the great thing about that was the library allowed me to display my artwork in the library for during Black History, and that's how it started. And what I love most about painting or about being an artist um, is the freedom. And what I mean by that is I feel free to create and express myself in any way that I choose. And I just love that feeling of being of not feeling limited. And in my creative process, basically, I will be inspired by life, just going out, watching movies, being in nature, other artists, other art. It all pretty much inspires me. And once I get that inspiration, I'll get a vision in my mind and I'll try to create that vision that I see in my mind. Um, and by doing that, and the way that I get there is I research as much as I possibly can about that subject, about whatever the vision is, about whatever tools I would need or technical um, things I would need to learn in order to create it, and I just go for it. So the Creative Legacy Art Podcast is a art project for me. It's a project that is pretty much showcasing the process of doing a podcast, but not only just doing a podcast, but growth process and progress, if you will. Um, it's basically about starting a project and not being great at it, not being perfect at it, and just showing the growth over time. So that's what this project what is about for me is starting off knowing that I'm not a professional, I've never done this before, and just to see like what it looks like to not be perfect, to grow and to get better day by day or each time. So that's what this project was about to begin with. And then it grew from that to become something that I hope will be a resource for other people out there, to help people who feel stuck and stagnant in their life or their art career or just in general. And so one of the reasons why I created this podcast is because I literally needed to create something. There was a time that I felt very stagnant and stuck in my career after a failed project that meant a lot to me, and I felt like I lost a lot in not being able to um, do the project at the time or in the way that I wanted to do it. And that failure just felt really um, it was something I never felt before. It was something I never experienced before, and it was hard for me to go through it. I felt very stuck. I felt very stagnant. I felt like nobody really understood um, how much it meant, or how much I lost, or how bad I felt about it. And it was just a really hard thing. So I created the podcast that I felt like I needed at that time. And the theme of the first season of the podcast is called Flow, which is an acronym FLO, and it stands for Fortified Love Opportunities. And what that basically means is that everything that I put into this podcast, the whole idea behind it, and everything that we put into it is fortified with love for myself, love for the artists who helped me and joined me in this process, and also love for the watchers. And it's all about just helping one another and being there. How this came to be, I went through a depression again, like I said, with a failed project. Um, I wanted to give up. I decided I would give up and not create art anymore, especially in the way that I had done it in the past. And I would just try to, just live life regular, work a regular job, do regular life. And in doing that, it was really hard. I felt very, um, I don't know the word for it. I felt very much like a shell of myself. And the longer I went without creating anything, the less I felt like myself and the worse I felt. And it was just not a good time for me. And during that time, I had a dream. I think it was a dream. And some lyrics to a song came to me. And so I wrote down the lyrics to the song. I would sing the song in the car over and over again so I wouldn't forget how the song went. And then I eventually recorded the song. I looked up how to get royalty free beats and music. And I recorded the song on BandLab. And that process just made me feel better. It was like my first thing that I created since then. And that was probably about, let's see, about 6 months later. And then I thought, what about doing a podcast? And so I started researching about how to do a podcast and what all I would need and what tools I would need and what I would need to learn. And it was just all very interesting. And I thought I could do that. And I started talking to other people who had podcasts, and it was just a good time. Another reason why I decided to do a podcast and the whole thing with flow, it was like getting out of stagnation, finding your flow again. And what is the flow? I started researching flow. I started researching flow arts and um, the definition of flow and things that flow, like air flow, water flow, earth flow, fire flow, everything flow. I just started researching it all. And then I thought about the creative process and the flow of creating art and flow of movement and dance. And I just thought it was so interesting. And I thought about, being in the flow when I create. And what that might look like for other artists who create different genres of art. Like if how does flow look when you're dancing, or how does it look when you're a musician or a rapper or a poet, or just anything. And so I thought, well, that would be so interesting to find out from these different types of artists what flow meant to them, what it felt like for them. And so I thought that that could be another piece that could help other artists find their flow and be inspired in their craft. And overall, basically, I felt like I created the podcast that I needed to hear at the time that I felt stagnant. And it's also still the podcast that I need to hear in this day right now, because that process of coming out of stagnation is a ongoing process. It's not something that for me lasts forever. It's something that I have to keep revisiting. I was just in stagnation a couple of days ago because doing this podcast, this particular one, I started recording back in May of 2023, and now it is March of 2023, and 2024, and that was always there was always going to be this episode where I came in and talked about what Creative Legacy Art Podcast is, and that should have been the first episode, but it ended up being this episode because I procrastinated so long. I was in stagnation. I was doing other things, and I just was very self conscious about getting out and speaking in front of people. And that was another reason for doing the podcast, was to become stronger in owning my voice and finding my voice and just being comfortable in speaking my voice, and um, just letting people know the things that I feel like are important, and just letting people know that I have things to say. And I think that they are important and they could help other people. So, how I found my flow again was trying something new, by writing the song, getting back out and trying to create again. That's how I found my flow. It was just literally, um, well, first of all, I want to say I didn't just come straight out of it. Like, I did allow myself to feel my feelings. I allowed myself to feel my feelings for 6 months before I even thought about trying to do anything else. So I don't want to skip over that and say, you just have to get over it. You just have to jump through. Like, I think that is that there is an important part of the process that includes feeling what you feel and not ignoring it and not pretending like everything is okay and everything is fine. And so once you have set with that long enough to where you're ready to move on to the next stage, then I would say get out there and start maybe looking and being open to new possibilities and new opportunities. This podcast would be for anyone who has felt alone, anyone who has felt stuck, who has felt stagnant, and yeah, that's who this podcast is for. It's not just for anyone who is interested in creativity or art, but I feel like you can apply these same principles to anything in life. If I were to give anybody advice who is feeling stagnant, stuck in life in general, and again, I'm not a licensed professional. I'm just a person who has gone through um, I'm just a person who has felt this way. So any advice that I would have for a person who has felt stagnant in their career, in their art, or in their life in general, would be to try new things. Try new things. Um, Try something different than what you're used to doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a different type of art. It could be just going to a different restaurant, um, going to a different park, driving a different way home, going to a different grocery store, just doing something different than your everyday routine. I think that does a lot for getting out of stagnation and finding your flow again. Just doing something different, trying something new. When I create, I don't always experience the flow state. I have experienced it before, and I've noticed that in order to get there, I use a lot of different things like music or TV shows or audio books or movies, and I listen to that in the background. And that helps me to take my mind off the details and the actual movements that I'm doing in order to create art. And I just allow my body to flow. And at that point, I'm no longer, being so conscious of what I'm doing. It just feels like the art is coming through me and not from me. I'm not consciously trying to paint. Well, I am, but it's just hard to explain. But yeah, I feel like at that point it's just like, and I've said this over and over again, is I just feel like it's coming through me and not from me. So that's the best way I can explain what it feels like for me. And I would say the piece of art that I'm most proud of when it comes to painting would be a painting called Mother Earth. And that was one of the paintings that I displayed in my very first solo art show. And in that show, I think I displayed like 23 paintings, and out of all those paintings, the only, well, I won't say the only, but it was the only one that sold. And I was excited to have someone actually buy my art in my first show, but I was really sad to actually let it go. Like I wanted to keep it. It was my favorite piece. And I remember consciously like pricing it higher than all the other ones because I didn't want anybody to buy it. And I was so shocked that somebody actually bought it. And I was like, oh no, I have to actually give it away. And so that taught me a lesson to, you don't have to sell every piece of art that you display. And yeah, so that was my favorite piece. I would happily buy it back if I could. And what else? My next favorite piece, my second favorite piece would be this podcast because it has been the hardest project that I've done. It has taken the most out of, well, not taken the most out of me, but it has required the most from me as far as what I had to learn, um, how vulnerable I have been in front of whoever may watch this. This is not my usual way of being. I don't normally get in front of the camera. Um, and yeah, it was just the hardest one, but I appreciate it a lot. So yeah, that would be my second favorite piece. So right now, this is the only project that I'm working on. Like I said, this is the last episode of season one. We're coming up here next with season two. And I'm not sure if we're going to do a season three yet. I may spin it in a different way, but I'm just excited to see what's going to come of this, or um, I'm just excited to see the growth. And yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now. And to learn more about me and my work and this podcast, you could follow us on Creative Legacy Art Podcast on Instagram. You can also connect with us on the website at creativelegacyart.com. You can also subscribe to the Creative Legacy Art Podcast YouTube, and we're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you'd like to subscribe. And go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on. We drop new episodes every Friday at 4 p.m. on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then we drop new episodes on our YouTube channel every Monday at 8 p.m. So yeah, go ahead and like and subscribe and share and follow and join and do all those things so we can expand our community and get the message out. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and have a good day or night. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Creative Legacy Art Podcast. If you like this video or if you like this podcast, please subscribe, join, do all the things, and share, above all, share, so that we can grow as a podcast and get the word out and help as many people as we possibly can. Have a great day, and remember to stay strong, stay positive, and keep creating.